We're all firmly awake. Just a few house rules. In case there is some sort of an emergency, please God there's not. Exits, everywhere there's a green man. Right? Anyone that has mobile phones, I would appreciate if you could put them on silent, or better still, turn them off. Because what we're going to be talking about this morning is a very important topic. So welcome to the Little Flower Hall, and welcome to the second of our lunchtime series workshops that the County Wicklow Mental Health Steering Group have been running. So this is our second. Our last one was on the topic of internal shame, and it was a very, very positive topic. So today what we're going to be talking about is the important issue of dual diagnosis. Okay? Now, to say that to the average person, even in the street of Bray, they wouldn't have a clue what you're saying. Right? So there's so many different definitions, and I'm just going to give my definition. Okay? So dual diagnosis is described as a condition where a person has both mental health issues and substance use issues. It's largely debated that these two problems together create a separate category and a whole set of complex needs of its own. That's my definition. But there's about 50 other definitions out there, and I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to move on. So today we have three very important guest speakers. First up, we have Brian Summers, and Brian is the Social Inclusion Case Manager for the travel community in Kilmine. I'm right, Brian? Say that? I didn't introduce you, sir. And then after that, we're going to have our own that works within Bray Travellers under the DESH program, Roisin Verdon. And Roisin is the female project outreach worker with the DESH project here in Bray. And lastly, we have Anita White. I haven't just received myself. And Anita is the National Program Manager stroke project lead for dual diagnosis from the HSE. Got that right. So our format is, Brian's going to come up first, right? We pause for a few minutes when Brian is finished. If anyone has any questions, be free to speak. And then we can move it on then, right down to the very end. Now, there is fresh sandwiches that has been given to us by the HSE. I'd like to thank the HSE for that. Not three-way dinners or like that, just a few mixtures of sandwiches. And I'd like people to mix around when we get to the coffee dock, which is just behind us, and just talk about the issue and talk about the experience of this morning. Because I really want us looking forward to it. So without further ado, we're going to start with Brian. Welcome, Brian. Yes.
Very much, Jim. I'm Brian Summers, Social Inclusion Case Manager for the Mental Travel Community in Galway. I didn't think it was going to be like this. I didn't think I was going to make it here this morning. I got lost. I went to 97 Main Street, it was a photo home shop. I parked, went down to the church down there, rang Roisin, I wasn't there, I was up there, I flew around, so I was a little bit panicky. Yeah, so basically my job is to work with members of the travel community in Balbriggan, and it's case management. So the whole case management piece is that the people I work with have to have an addiction issue. And then the whole case management piece is to work or the live issues that's presenting in their life before we can get to the addiction issues. And sometimes it's mental health, sometimes it's housing. And sometimes there has to be a crisis for people to come to Kilmine in general. People don't come in and say, I want a lovely life, can you help me? You come in because that's the thing with charge before the course. The yoga group gets Tuesdays involved, and you might be taking the children that have been thrown out of home, excluded from the family, wherever it is, and that's when you come in. So it's a working with that. Now I have a lot of experience, 14 years of experience working in Kilmine with addiction, so this role I'm only in since June. I've been hanging around with travellers all my life. Travellers are still my friends today. I really respect them, they really respect me, but to work with mental health and dual diagnosis, I haven't had any experience yet in the role that I'm doing. And it was nice to hear Jim say about the whole terminology terminology, dual diagnosis, do you know what I mean, schizophrenia, this, whatever it is, even to mention the word depression, when I'm talking to members of the travel community, like, it's like, depression, no, you don't have to take medication, if it's something that it's the label, you know, it's the label that's put on it, even addiction, you know, I went into a halting site in Balbriggan and drove in down the back of the yard, and your man was going mental, and John things I drove down the yard and right at the gate and the whole lot, and then I was trying to explain what I was doing, and he told me that he shed his job last year, there was a lot of chainsaws taken out, he told me he was in the rubbish yard, you know what I mean? But then we got talking about what my role was and how I could help him the whole lot. And I says, but the person must have addiction issues. He stood back. He says, we don't have any of that now. What he heard me saying was AIDS and syringes. That's what he heard me saying. We don't have any of that now. So I had to change the terminology because the travellers have their own terminology of things. And when it comes to mental health, do you know what I mean? They'll say, oh, God loves me, he suffers with his nerves. And do you know what I mean? And that's a nice way of saying it because there's no label there. There's no diagnosis. Now I know there is one man in particular who does have dual diagnosis that is a member of the travel community in Balbriggan, and I haven't yet got to meet him because he's not ready to meet me. So I tried to get in through my son. One of my sons is in prison. I tried to get him out of prison into Kilmoyne, and he has a trial. You can't come out of prison into Kilmoyne if you have a trial. So I tried to get through his other son, and keep asking about his father. But his father's he's horrible in alcoholism and the whole street. We went up and two of them was fighting in the trail, and he was saying, oh, James, you're going to better go home now. And I said, I don't understand, you want to stay with me, on you. So it was just about going. So I'm trying to manoeuvre my way in. And when I do go into sites, there is phone calls being made. There's been a fella here, Brian Summers, you know him, and they're all vouching for him. Yeah, so they're all coming back and saying, yeah, we asked about you and your air all week. So it's about trying to get in and deal with the addiction and the whole case management piece. I have had experience, I am an accredited addiction counsellor. There was someone came to me who had a traveller friend who I'm working for, he's looking to do private work. I said, I don't do private work, I can't justify being exposed to more trauma after work. I actually have a partner, I'm a father, and you know what I mean, and a son, and to do all these kinds of things. But I did agree to meet him in a coffee shop, so I met him in Costa Coffee on Northside. He came along with his friend, and he says that he keeps thinking about killing himself. You know, I asked him, did he go to his doctor? He says he went to the doctor, and he says the doctor was saying that it's because you're snorting cocaine and you're drinking alcohol. That's why you want to kill yourself, and you're coming down off that. And he says, yeah, but I've been off and off for a while, and I still think about killing myself. I says, was there anyone ever in your family who had a mental illness? He says, what's a mental illness? I says, well, it's something like mentally that they couldn't understand themselves, their family couldn't understand, and they maybe had to go into hospital. He says, yeah, there was an uncle of mine, he was often in one of their hospitals. I says, when this happened to you again, now this fella knew that there was something wrong with his head. He knew there was something wrong. He wasn't short of money, he had a yard out in London, he used to rent out, he had a lovely wife and kids, do you know what I mean? He just kept wanting to kill himself. So he says, the next time that happens, he says, go up to A&E and tell them that you want to see a psychiatrist. And tell them that you're not leaving until you see a psychiatrist, that you're looking for in the assessment note, that you have a number, you're talking about killing yourself all the time. They keep on telling you that's because of your cocaine use and your alcohol use, and they keep, you know what I mean? I says, and don't leave until you see the psychiatrist and you have it. So he went up anyways, his friend meeting the next day, so he went up to the hospital last night, he says that he wasn't leaving until he got this, and they told him, no, he can't stay there. They made an appointment for the local mental health team on the Wednesday, and they gave him an antidepressant and sent him home. And then he rang me the next day that he was found dead out the back of the trailer, he was alive. So I think the diagnosis piece is, how do you get the diagnosis? What's the solution focused piece here to getting this diagnosis? Do you know what I mean? Because I say there's a lot of people out there who probably do have a mental illness, but it hasn't been diagnosed. And who are seen as troublesome, who are probably in Mountjoy or in the Dockers, or they're stuck isolated in a room and people's looking at them. So I don't really know what the solution is, but I'm open to being trained in anything, you know what I mean? I'm not being calm to me today, so if there's any training going to throw me in, because I'd like to be able to best support people who does have dual diagnosis. Now, we work with people who have dual diagnosis in Kilmore, and we have people in the residential who does have schizophrenia and who are welcome in, you know what I mean, we need a report from the doctor. But I remember two boys in particular who had schizophrenia, and they came in, they were going through the program, and everyone in Kilmore has to do a life story. That's just part of the therapy what Kilmore has. And this boy had to go down and see the local mental health team every 2 weeks about the depot injection and all. And when they went down and said that they weren't sleeping with their tongue, they were thinking about when they were younger. The doctor was up with the medication. Do you know what I mean? So then when it came up to the life story, that they were just basically just sitting in the chair, just heavy breathing, they were on that much medication. Do you know what I mean? But they stayed clean and they got an opportunity. But we need to be training on that as well. We really need to be training. Do we change our program to suit people who have mental illness, or are we doing the right thing or are we doing the wrong thing? We don't know. Psychiatrists don't work us. I don't know many psychiatrists I've been on. They don't work. Or drug use areas doesn't get the clean force of them, we walk around. Where are you now? Oh, not in the catchment area, sorry, we can't do one. And you're just looking for a review. Can you review the medication list? They're on the medication the last 6 years. Can you review to see is it working, is it not working? Do you need to up it, you need to down it, you need to, do you know, because even the medication what people is being given for mental illness and dual diagnosis and all, it's for a month. It's not monitored. Do you know what I mean? But this medication does work, it's all being trialed, it works. Do you know what I mean? But if it's not being monitored, it's not going to work on the person. If we take all the tablets today, do you know what I mean? I don't tablets for the rest of the month. Or we don't take any tablets today, no smoking hash or snorting cocaine. The medication is not working. So I don't have a solution for all of this. For me personally, what I think needs to happen is, I've worked in case management in the homeless hospitals in the city centre, and people with dual diagnosis was filtered down into the hospitals. Do you know what I mean? You weren't getting the proper care and things. And you're trying to get safety net to use the medication. And then they were doing that best, and you're trying to get assessments and all this kind of stuff. But if we had a unit, I don't know, something like Bosnia, you know, the way they made that a gated community and was sworn out, everyone needs to be helped with the Ukrainians and the Bosnians and all. That if you ended up homeless, that you were taking the minibus and you were brought here, where there was psychiatrists, there was addiction counsellors, there was nurses, there was housing nurses, there was everything, and you were assessed in different thresholds. There's people that's homeless that should be in psychiatric units and not in the homeless areas or living in tents. They shouldn't be. That they need to be addressed, assessed, and something needs to happen. You know what I mean? Well, whether it was St. Mary's Hospital in Phoenix Park, and you end up homeless, you went up there and you were assessed, yeah, you were okay to go to the new hospital, or hold on, we have to hold you. Do you know what I mean? That's something, I think it needs to be solution focused. Do you know what I mean? And not throwing loads of money at things and thinking, where do we go over here, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I hope I didn't upset anyone, and I hope I didn't say, yeah, that was out of school. I hope I don't get called in the job tomorrow and get a slap on the wrist as I said. But I do say it as I see it, and I don't care. Sometimes a slap on the wrist goes good as well. So, yeah, and just to say that my role is with people in the bad break. But if anyone knows any traveller who's struggling and would like to get into Kilmore, once they give me an address in bad break, so I'll leave it there, thanks.
Is there anyone that have any questions on Brian, what Brian had to say? No.
So you can ask any question you want, but I'm not right to ask the question if you have any questions.
Brian, are you allowed to go in as a company the lads when they're going on appointments, like to visit a psychiatrist?
Yeah, 100% because that's case management. Yeah. It's a hand-holding exercise. I'll go with you.
Yeah. And is that allowed from the side of the service?
Yeah, 100%. Because it is case management. It's just that I haven't had anyone come to me to say, look, we need to go down and see a psychiatrist, but you're not taking the medication, come on. Do you know what I mean? We go down, when was the last time we were reviewing? I'll go down with you. And if they want me to win, I can win because it's their care. I can win then. Do you know what I mean? But I haven't had that yet because I've had a work and doing the case management, the homeless service, where I went up and met the guy who was over the homeless people, the psychiatric section, and it went well. Do you know what I mean? When you have someone there with you. But I can't 100% in. That's the whole thing about case management.
There would be, Brian's given experience from Balbriggan, population of travellers. Population of travellers in every major town in Ireland are suffering the same, right?
Yeah.
For the first time, we're opening up on a topic that you wouldn't dare talk about a short time ago. I'm a traveller man. I brought the whole topic around addiction in my community. I nearly got chastised by my own community. Don't you dare talk about that. That's nothing to do with us, that's the country people's problem. But yet it was invested in the traveller for 20 years, 30 years before I even brought it up. Because I could see it with my own two eyes. People might be familiar with the name Desh and think that's, Neil was taking this one, it's like a word of one of the schools for disadvantaged and marginalised children. Desh is not, Desh is our language of something like look. We had to come up with a name of look because it was in front of our eyes. Now we've gone a long way forward. Trust is a massive thing, right? I'm sure you would agree with that. But I can only speak about Bray. There's a common trend with what's happening out in Balbriggan. I can think about Bray. Gone are the days where you would say to someone, I want you to get 3 buses to Northside Dublin just for the service. Now the services are on the doorstep. The support in Bray is second to none on the topics that we're talking about. But you can't force someone. You can't go out there and say, you have a mental health problem. You have to open that up by trust.
Now the thing was, I had to grab and see who the other travellers listen to. Because they listen to someone. So I'm not getting Father Paddy Kelly. So he's coming out to Kilmoy Lodge with me on Friday, and I'm going to Ashley House to meet all the clients there. He's going to be me, my new volunteer outreach woman. So obviously he's going to say, you need to bring money so much, you need to bring money so much. And he's going to look, Alan Merriman, I'm going mad at me, he's a lovely man. And the respect that you have.
Particularly in the Balbriggan area.
Yeah.
You know, in different areas,
Yeah.
maybe different priests, but particularly in Balbriggan, my Father Paddy would have done the majority of the weddings and the Christmas.
Yeah, as he was telling me all about. And just to say that, like, if any of the travellers think that you're telling anything about them to any other traveller, you're gone. Look, there's no, the confidentiality has to be huge.
The trust is essential out of this. When we opened up a shared needle exchange, way back in time when Sean's allowed it, because Sean won't allow it now, it's gone through the roof. We opened it up in our premises, which is the other side of the church, and you know, it was done in a way that we're separate clients as well as tribes, just to bring it in, because we don't have a big population, but we do have a population that have addiction problems. I would say, and I would know, I'm related to travellers from New Ross to South County Dublin, in all different names, Connorses, Cashes, Brian's, Morehouses, I'm related. So everyone would know a relationship. So I knew there was certain travellers that were bypassing Bray, that we opened up this week down, and going to the next town, which was Dunleary, right down Carter Street. So what we had to do, and it was outreach, we had to build up that trust. And that trust was persevering. The word that you use is confidential. I'm 29 years at this. So now travellers can come in, as they do, not just around addiction issues, but other issues as well. And they know if they're talking to some of my staff, and I don't have a massive amount of staff, whatever they say in the room stays in the room. And that is the one important thing among such a small population, which they want people knowing that I have a sibling that has. It's a shameful thing still in different parts of Ireland among travellers say, my daughter and my son have a drug problem. No, my daughter and my son has a mental health problem, theirs. Because it's the cop-out. It's the most easy thing to say. It's like the suicide. The suicide rate is wrong. The statistics is wrong. We know in Corners reports that were done up and down the country, it was never put down as suicide. Because people will come in and say, don't say that word. That word is not accepted in the traffic trade. But you know what? We're getting there. You want to ask a question, Susan?
Well, I suppose it's a big thing, isn't it, getting the mental health services to understand that somebody's actually self-medicating. That, you know, that if they are overusing prescription drugs, or whether it be alcohol or non-prescription drugs, for a lot of instances they're self-medicating. You know, a mental health issue or for their, you know, for whatever issues that they have, and just for the mental health services to make that connection, you know?
And then you have PTSD.
Yeah,
From all the
absolutely.
few. And it only presents itself 100 years later. And now the drinking has went through the roof and you have the PTSD. Now, we're going to refer a few people to Coira now about drinking. And doing amazing. Doing amazing work with PTSD. And they're ringing me, oh, she's a lovely woman, I can't wait to go next week and I've stopped gambling, I'm not drinking. And, do you know what I mean? That there is services there, but we need someone to go in and tell them about the service and to have a positive experience. But they won't stand up and say, oh, I went out there and seen a couch on and I'm doing well.
Well, actually, what we're finding in the Balbriggan area, strangely enough, is most of the referrals, like that was set up, that was set up like over 14 years ago, Hiram going in. And it would have been myself who sourced it, so that's in the parochial house of Balbriggan. So the venue is fantastic, no one's going to bat an eyelid at somebody walking into a church. But originally the referrals would have gone through Balbriggan Travellers, but now all the referrals actually are coming through the community. Well, bar maybe yourself. The majority of the referrals are actually coming through community members themselves, because they are having that positive experience and they are telling someone else, look, you can go on down there and speak to her.
She will find out, are you a fuel man? Yeah, she's like a person, when I want to change the appointments around, so you don't home with this person.
Exactly, so it's all about knowledge.
It's client-centered.
Well, it's working, Brian, because it's culturally appropriate. We do have a counsellor from the National Council Service that runs a clinic here in Bray. Now, I have to say, going back over the years, in the beginning, it was hard. The biggest positive is we didn't run it out of our building because we didn't want other travellers seeing other travellers. The women, the travelling women, yes, of course, they needed it just as much as anyone else. But when we got the first travelling man in, right? Yes, we put up with all the different, oh, you're rully, another word for it, you're mad going into that place because you know what it is. But when that person goes in for a period of time and then comes out a different person, a more positive person. Could have lost someone in the family, there could have been addiction, alcohol issue, it could be anything. But that person then, and then other travellers will see, male travellers, a different life and say, whatever you got, have that, do you know what I mean? And then the encouragement.
Exactly.
It's the brave step of stepping over into something, because we the travelling people, we're touching on things that even a short time ago I wouldn't even dream of, thinking that we've achieved so much, and now it's keep moving forward,
And it's for everyday life, this council. Because these are everyday life and everyday real life issues. And then probably go into the trauma from years ago. It's the relationship that this woman is building with these travellers. It's second to none.
But there's also what you were saying about the level of suicide. People are living with anticipating anxiety constantly. Waking up in the morning, checking their phone, you know, it's all my family, it's everyone I know. That's constant, like this constant anxiety.
Absolutely.
You know.
And then you break up a culture. Addiction and suicide was through the roof. They have all the research and the Apache Indians, the Maori people, all this kind of stuff to do. And people can't travel anymore. They can't travel. You could go down to Wexford and get them to ring the dole up up here and they can give the dole. They don't do that anymore. So it's all, then you want to do that, you want to do scrap, you have to have a license to get a license. Then you have that license, you have to get another, and pay this to dispose of stuff and all.
Horses, you have to have 3 acres, stabilisation.
Shoes, and the woman taking it off you.
When that came in, like we had travellers on the roadside with no sanitation, and I know which is a horse was going to get better. Proper stabilised, 3 acres for one horse? Jeez. I know being a horse owner in the past, we've managed 6 of that. 3 acres is a lot of land. But that's the bylaws. That's the okay, is there anyone else that wants to?
I just want to mention, I think what you mentioned around your case manager, I think what's really needed in the area of dual diagnosis is the case management type system where it's holistic as well.
Lisa has all that, Lisa has dual diagnosis.
And not spoiling it, but we are going to come to a strong recommendation at the end of this. So hold that thought.
So just to say that I really enjoyed it all, but when it comes to dual diagnosis, I'd really love to get in and do a bit of work around that. I'd love to be trained up and have the trust to go in and talk to people and maybe go down, as you said, but down to the side pointers, let them know you have that back. Because I haven't got a mental illness, I can't understand it. Do you know what I mean? But I had got an addiction and I went into recovery, so I know about that. So I'd love to know a little bit about this and combine the two and to try to help as many people as I can. If you can help one person, here we go, we're going to take it.
We know who he is, he's an old man. Okay, so can we move on, or is anyone else with maybe the last question, or anyone, everyone's happy to move on? Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're good with time. So the next person, guest speaker, coming up is our own William Gray Traverse Local Development Group, and Desh is Roisin Burden.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Brian. Brian said everything that I want to say, so and it's a very, very important topic, very important topic for the services, and very important topic for the people who work in the services. And I have a few notes here just to make sure that I cover everything, because Brian, you mentioned a lot of it. You spoke about, services being in a place where we want to help, and we do help to the best of our ability. But what happens is that we can only do so much. And then as a service, we refer clients on, and when they go to the mental health services, a lot of the time what happens is that a urine is done, and once there's any chemicals in the system, they are discharged and sent to the local addiction service. And it's pretty much like a pinball machine, and that's what the person feels like, is that it's just this revolving door going on and on and on. And in the middle of it all, you have families, you have parents, you have partners, you've law enforcement, you have, and Brian mentioned it there as well in terms of, the breakdown in, we have a number of clients who suffer with dual diagnosis. And one particular person ended up in a homeless service and then got disqualified from the homeless service. Nowhere to live, as a result of their behaviour, their erratic behaviour. And as a result of the voices in their heads, they had to take medication. Once they were on the medication, they became violent, they became erratic, and the services just couldn't put it anymore. They have rules, they have, and rightly so, and it's how they function. And in the middle of it all, you have this person crying, not knowing what to do. What we have is that we have had a number of service users who self-harm, who come in after self-harm, who have self-harm just before they come in. We've had to do first aid on them. We've had to remove knives. We have had to split up fights. We have had Brian's talking about it there, and we see this as part of our role, even though it's not a part of our role. Again, Brian was saying there about crisis management a lot of the time as a service, that's what we do in Daesh. Talking about, faith and trust in people outside of their community. There isn't even a lot of faith and trust in people in their own community. And we've worked really, really hard in our service in order to gain that trust. And I know that myself as a project worker, I feel quite honoured to be trusted by anybody. So just a few of the things that we've had to, I just wrote a few things down, and these are the impact, is what we've experienced as a service: self-harm, head slamming, skin gouging, self-punching in the face, overdoses, suicide attempts, suicide accomplishments, anger, rants, threats, confusion, apologies, begging, pleading, disappearances. And that's a really scary one, when you don't know where that person is. They've just disappeared off the face of the earth. Emotional turmoil, indifference and despondence. Because at the end of the day, what happens is that there's no hope, there's no help. There's a lot of mental confusion within that as well. So as a service worker, you do your best to try and break through, but there's only so much you can do. I've attended doctors with clients. I've attended doctors with clients, and the doctors have laughed at them because they're at the end, they just don't know what to do, you know. I have brought people to psychiatric units, and I've collected them from psychiatric units later on that day. You know, the protocol is that if there is any problem, you ring the ambulance brings you to A&E. The A&E will tell you you have to attend the day service, you go to the day service, and then you're directed back to the addiction service. And that's just the way that it is at the moment, you know. Through doing some research, this subject has been spoken about for a couple of decades, even more, has been written about. I was just reading articles yesterday from 2008. At the moment in England, I think it's 16% of the prison population suffer from dual diagnosis. We don't have any statistics in Ireland at the moment, or Neil can update us on that. From what I can find, there's no statistics on that. And you know, another article that I read and I really identified with it is that actually prison has become the solution for dual diagnosis. It has become the reprieve. We know that as a service, our service users have ongoing criminal issues as a result of their medication, trying to deal with their mental health issues. And I suppose it's like it's the chicken and the egg, you know, it really is. It's like, you know, and there's this argument that goes on all the time. Oh, it's not an addiction issue, it's a mental health issue. And then the mental health issue is not the mental health issue, it's the addiction issue. And the fact of the matter is that they're both there, you know, and until both of them are addressed at the same time, nothing's going to happen. And that's the truth, you know. It just means that the system needs to change. It does mean, however, that someone's going to have to take responsibility. That's the way that we see it. You know, I know that we as a service, myself and Christy, talk about it a lot. But what we do feel as a service is that, you know, we need the local stakeholders to come together to form a group, a core group around dual diagnosis, and that is services that we come and work together. Because I think the more we come together, the more change will happen. As individuals, it's just, you know, and it's not that, like, I'm not trying to blame anybody or anything like that. This is just the way it is. You know, the part about Brian was talking about trauma, PTSD. You know, we have cultural trauma. We have the trauma of the whole of the travelling community being forced out of their way of living, which has had that ripple effect in terms of alcoholism and you know, domestic abuse, you know, incest. You know, we have it across the board, but you have all of these things going on, sibling abuse, all of these things going on, and then we have depression. We have trying to deal with those issues outside level, and again, all of that stuff ripples down. You know, another thing that I have written down here is the ACEs. You know, the adverse childhood experience. And again, we all know, anybody who has studied ACEs knows that a lot of ACEs suffer. I think we all suffer with ACEs on some degree, especially the Irish people. But and their wooden spoon. But the fact is that through a need to try and alleviate the pain, the person ends up in a lot more trouble than they began with. And it spirals downwards. Now, like any other spiral, it can move in the opposite direction if people come together and start working together. What else have I got? Yeah, and it's I suppose, you know, the thing about it is that they have people come coming at them from all angles. Again, there's that shame and stigma, you know, not just on the outside, but from their families and from the community as well. And again, we're in the middle of that, trying to negotiate an understanding and a compassion around all that stuff. I have a piece that I asked one of our service users who has wants to write something about her experience. And I also asked her opinion on what she thinks needs to change. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read that out. Her personal statement. On Monday the 20th of July 2009, I was discharged from Glencree Psych Unit after 10 years in and out of hospital. I was admitted at the age of 16 directly from the local clinic, the Child Adolescent Psych Services, in February 1999. Between then and the age of 26, I had both short and long stay admissions, totaling at least 40 admissions in 10 years. Vision for Change was brought into law circa 2009. Around the same time I was discharged. Presently, when a person presents themselves with psychiatric symptoms in a hospital, the psychiatric team will issue a urine test. Depending on the contents of that urinalysis, 90% of people are refused entry. The person is offered a leaflet on community addiction services, of which at present are highly scrutinised due to the impact of overcrowding. Let me tell you, the reader, the listener, of one devastating example. I had a young friend named Josh. Josh came from a dysfunctional background and grew up around narcotics. By age 15, Josh had become heavily addicted to cannabis and cocaine and was using various other substances. I knew Josh since he was born in 1999, and he had the energy and the heart of an angel. I myself was living in difficult circumstances. Every week I would write 3 letters to the council and local politicians, and eventually in 2019 I secured permanent accommodation. When I moved in, Josh came to a party I had with some of his friends. I knew he was very stressed. A few weeks later he rang me in tears. He could not take the persistent thoughts in his head. I begged him to go and talk to the psychiatric services, and he promised that he would. Josh presented himself in a traumatic state at the admissions and was turned away due to narcotics in his system. Shortly after, Josh hung himself. He was only 19. Jesus. I cried and cried. There was no more hope in his soul. Personally, I knew it was psychiatric with Josh, but the services had the perfect excuse. He had dual diagnosis just like me. It is still so hurtful that this life could have been saved and his death is unnecessary. Here is what I propose to rectify this broken system. It is quite simple. The psychiatric and addiction services need to amalgamate. We, Ireland, need dual diagnosis centres where one building caters for both addiction and psychiatry. We need educated addiction psychiatrists and mental health workers trained professionally in the community in both. I travel outside my town every 2 weeks on 2 buses for my psychiatric injection, and then have to travel 20 kilometres to receive my addiction recovery support in Bray. Amalgamate. Imagine my little buddy if he had presented himself as a new addition to the psychiatric service. He would have had the proper addiction counselling and access to psychiatric medication in order to monitor his recovery. Drugs and addiction is not a criminal issue, it is a social and community issue, yet psychiatry is biased. This is not good enough. I am strong, but young kids deserve the help. How many more suicides? How many more Joshes? And that's the truth of the reality, of what we as services deal with. We do our best, and I know that everybody's doing their best in their profession. Again, it's not about blame. It's about progression. That's what it's about. It's about recognising that there is a need for for a service, and that this service needs to be created. And it is time. It's definitely time. You know, we've heard myself, we've heard Brian, the issue, and we have come so far, you know, especially in terms of talking about mental health. I was only talking to a service user yesterday who was saying that they thought they would never be able to talk and say openly that they had an issue. That's progress, you know, and we just need to keep that moving. We really, really need to keep that moving. I have to make sure I said everything now Christy wanted me to say. Yeah, so it is, it's important that the progression is made and that we continue to come together and we continue to make sure that this topic is top of the agenda. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for that. That particular personal story, we did get permission just to guardian the room, so I just want to make sure. Okay, that was another hard-hitting sort of regarding of what we're talking about today. So is anyone else a question?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Roisin. That was extremely powerful. Everything, every character, particularly the personal narrative. So I just think if it was a case that the stakeholders were to come together, it would be fantastic to have somebody like the lady who was able to, so articulately as well, to explain, you know, this is what happens, you know, this is the failures and how many people we've lost because this isn't there to be part of maybe that sort of steering group if they felt that they could.
Absolutely, and that's actually one thing that I had down here was to say that in order for these services to work, there really needs to be people who have been through the system, who understand what is needed.
Yeah.
And cause, I mean, it's great to be educated, it's great to have knowledge, but if you haven't walked in the shoes, you really have no idea, absolutely no idea what anybody is feeling. And so, you know, in order for us to really understand, we need to have people who have been through. And that means having the service users involved. Yeah, absolutely. That's where our education will come from. Yeah. We were just saying that 1.8% of our service users attend through crisis management.
Roisin, you touched on something that I would have brought up earlier on in terms of experience. Where we build up trust, there's fear. You know, there's fear. People use the words of frontline. What I've known from a community development point of view, and we're talking about travellers here, travellers were absolutely in fear of this disease because of the underlying serious health within such a small community. I know places in Wicklow that barricaded themselves in the fear of their sibling or their grandfather or their mother are going to pick up on this. What we are dealing with now in the aftermath of COVID-19, not saying for 1 second it's gone away, it's still there. I'm still the COVID manager of Great Travellers Clinic in Edinburgh. The well-being of my staff is more important to me than anything else. But I've witnessed the difference in personalities of what a person's going through. And it can be a fearful thing. We've seen it with our own two eyes in the building of Great Travellers Clinic in Edinburgh. And who are we? I would use the words, none of us has the magic wand in our pocket to say, that's right, that's wrong. And even by the end of today, what this is doing today is creating awareness. This is not to be critical of anything. We are opening up a topic that came through the survey of our travel community in the mental health report. It's number 7, they're on the set, and that's why we pulled them out. And at the end of it, which I'll talk more about, a recommendation that we're going to come up with at the end of it, and we can explore it even further now. Thank you very much, Roisin. Is there anyone else that wants to say anything, or people? Yes?
I was very touched by that statement of that client that you read out. But I think what's really important to see, and I do think all of the people present in this room are seeing, is the missed opportunities. You speak of trust and how travellers the homeless is the same, and many other people have issues around being able to ask for help, and it's a big thing in Ireland, and I'm not Irish. And then they ask for help and they don't get it, and they're being ping-ponged from one place to another, and to another. And as a suicide prevention officer, the self-harm and suicide is an issue for me, and the self-esteem issues that bring that on. The shame of asking for help and being told you're not good enough to get it. You know, and the readiness of asking for help is something we need to tap into, and then we're telling them, no, you're not getting it. So we've missed an opportunity, we've missed a window. And I know there's an awful lot of good work being done, and you said it's not about blame, and it cannot be about blame, because that doesn't get us anywhere. And I've learned in my 22 years in Ireland, nothing here is fast. We take our time in doing things, but the impact on the people who are trying to help is not something we can dismiss either. The people like you, the people in primary health care, the community counsellors. And I've worked in the homeless sector before, and the amount of times that we've reached out for help because we knew something wasn't right, but we didn't know. We were low threshold, we worked with clients with addiction, that wasn't the issue, but if there was, we needed to know if there was something on the line beneath what caused their erratic behaviour. Was it just the drugs, or was there something else that we needed to know? All we wanted was, tell us if there's something else, and we couldn't get them in the door. We could not get them in the door as soon as there was an addiction present. And it's the impact on the workers as well that needs to be looked at, and the burnout.
Well, that's what some of us were talking this morning with my colleague Evelyn, and a lot of primary health care workers here as well. It takes its toll on you.
Yeah, it does. It show you
We all have
human.
our own lives as well, by the way. I mean, you know. But
I mean, another one of the things that we would have came up against is that, you know, it's recommended by services that you know, you're given appointments to attend mindfulness classes and CBT classes, and unmanageability is a part of this disease, like, you know, so people don't turn up for appointments to, you know, so it's setting people up to fail. That's what it is. It's, you know, and it's very frustrating, you know, and heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, and then in terms of the diagnosis, is that, you know, we need to get people into the services to get them diagnosed.
Absolutely.
You know,
That's the
past
issue.
the door. We need to get them past the door, you know.
it's probably one of the biggest barriers. Is
Get them in the door.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got two speakers, so we'll bring yourself in.
I just find the problem at the moment as a primary health care worker in medical, that an awful lot of people seems to be getting medications off the GP, and as this lady said, like being referred to a psychiatrist, or being referred to someplace else from here to there, like for mental health, they seem to be relying an awful lot on the medications more so than on speaking about it, and that works with the men and the women in our community. And with travel to suicide rates lower than it ever was, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, with 18, 17, 18, 15-year-olds, 19-year-olds. There's a fear of being more around father, bringing kids up that's not being able to speak about mental health or anything else around it. Like that's what we have with the huge problem at the moment, speaking about it.
For such a small minority.
Yes, that's the biggest barrier.
Yeah.
But they seem to be relying an awful lot on the medications, and then when they seem to not want the medication anymore, the withdrawal symptoms.
And you're so right, and in terms of, you know, that the solution, short-term solution is the medication, and what happens then is that the person begins to lean heavier on the medication.
Yes.
And then as they lean heavier on the medication, the mental health problems, you know, grow rather than proceed, and that is a huge part of it. And it's also a huge part of the secret, especially within the travel community, is that a lot of it isn't to do with big drugs. It's not to do with the heroines or the cocaines. It's to do with the, you know, it's to do with the prescriptions, and it's to do with the, you know, behind the door.
Yes.
You know.
And there seems to be an awful lot of stigma behind that as well. Within the travel community, like everything. Being a member of the travel community, it's like drugs, mental health, anything got to do with that.
Absolutely.
It seems to be wanting to sweep under the carpet and go away.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it doesn't go away unless they ask for help. You know.
And it's a universal issue, But again, it's because of, you know, it's such a small minority, it's a huge issue. You know, and it is, and that, you're so right, and that is a huge part of it.
While you were talking about, you know, I had a note down to ask questions that then your service user answered. I was trying to figure out, you know, the ping pong aspect of being battled between one or the other, the two disciplines. And I was trying to think, would it be best if the mental health services and the addiction services agreed to work on their own aspect, but then your service user answered for me and said, no, it needs to be a one-stop shop to keep the focus and to keep the accessibility central, which is all fine. And I think that seems to be the way to go, particularly for service users, yes, and I think that should be taken seriously. We're just wondering, in this country, we have a long tradition of not solving our own problems and looking elsewhere and doing best practice. So I'm just wondering, is there best practice? Is there somewhere else we could go to and say, this is how they do it? This is what we'd like to bring back here, because we're very reluctant to you know, invent our own solutions in this country. You know, and it's not just the health service, it's lots of, and I dread to think that maybe there might be some other country in the world that has the best practice of copying us, you know, but is there somewhere where we could focus on?
So I put that into the search engine yesterday.
Yeah.
That's what I did, right? Just to be as up to date as possible with the information. And the name that came up right was, I've only seen this, I may be wrong, right, but this is what came up. Smartmore Catholic, right, actually talk about dual diagnosis. They talk about treating the addict with dual diagnosis. And I thought that was amazing. I really did, you know. And that's not saying that services aren't dealing with it and not working with it. I know that we had Keltoy, who they dealt with trauma, it's gone, you know. So it's about being precise, and it's about being direct and knowing exactly what it is that we're looking at, and then knowing exactly what it is that's needed. And again, I think that comes back to the service users as well. You know, like, what do you need? How can we help you? And again, Brian said it's client-centered, you know, and that's the way it needs to be. We talk about, we've been to the drug forums, the national drug forums, and in it, the innovation part of it is all about the wraparound service. The wraparound service. The wraparound service. And it's like shaking a snow globe. You know, there's an illusion of movement, you know, or changing of names of organisations. But nothing happens. Nothing happens. There's a shuffle, and then it's dancing. A report. Yeah. And it needs to end. Look at, you know, I think we're all awake. You know, I think we're all awake.
I think the travelling community has that much force that when people come to me, or someone within the service division, we want to do a report on the travelling people in Wicklow. I said, how many more do you want to do? The travellers are sick.
Just read the last
Talk about accommodation, talk about education, talk about health. These are 3 topics. Now, when I started my journey 29 years ago, they were the important 3 topics. Fast forward 29 years further, they're still the topics. And we're still discrimination.
I think they're one of the most over-researched communities, most certainly in Ireland, if not in Europe.
No, I think there is.
Without any actual actions coming from your research.
There is a progression in, I think, in terms of, say for instance with the Aborigines and, you know, Native American Indians, that there are, I was talking to a guy during the week in another service, and he was saying that they have done extensive studies around you know, there's a lot of work being done around the Aborigines, and it's the same problem, you know, it's just a different country. So yeah, I think it's happening. It is happening. It's happening. We're all part of it.
I would say there has been, and I wouldn't deny it.
Yeah.
I'm a traveller activist, I'm a community development worker. I've got that 29 years of experience. I can't say that everything is negative, because it's not. I'm saying there has been changes. One of the biggest changes for me as a traveller man, and this is my personal, is the government at the time recognising the travellers as exactly who they are. That was a massive thing. But what did it mean? It just meant, okay, now because I travellers thinking, oh, they recognise us now as who we are after all these years. Can I get now that photo on 2 acres? Because I said, no, it's just like, why hide the shame that you are? Because for far too long we've had generations of travellers for all different reasons hiding their identity. In other words, we went into an identity crisis because it is so much bad perception at local, regional and national that you didn't want to be associated with Travers.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now, I was lucky enough to be a proud person in the Dáil that particular night and to witness what I witnessed, because this just wasn't one party, this went around the house. And I've never seen as much people leading coalitions and parties talking so positive about Travers I've ever done in my lifetime. But again, it's a step.
But it's
It's
you
a
know,
step.
the first talk was about internalised oppression, and as far as I can see, dual diagnosis is what would you call it? It's self-normalised. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So it's a solution that has been found, but it's not conductive.
Just with the ethnic recognition is brilliant, it's great, but it doesn't go far enough anywhere near.
It doesn't.
So when you talk about Aborigines and other people that actually their rights are beginning to be, beginning now, but they've gone even further down and they've been recognised as an ethnic minority within, and that's what we need to push for, but not just ethnicity, but recognition as an Irish ethnic minority, and that will produce more rights within Europe, so that's the next big push.
Well, that's Susie, you're involved, you're an activist yourself. There's a lot of work that's going on in the background. Will it happen in my lifetime? I don't know, but then again, I thought, would Travers be recognised in my lifetime? And lo and behold, because we worked at it, we stuck at it, national representatives up and down the country, and we got it across the line. Now it's the next step, you're 100% right. I just want to go back to a point just before Christine mentioned, I think it's very, very important. We have a very dedicated and hard-working primary healthcare program, which Christine is one of the workers there today. And one of the things, and it's not through sort of like doing it deliberately, prescription abuse, yes, it's happening everywhere, but in our community, it's like someone with no bad intentions that will visit someone, and that someone is having a bad day, and they pull out of their pocket and say, try one of these because these are good, not thinking that you got that for a particular reason. And all of a sudden then the person's getting different medication, and that's the way. But it's not abuse in any way, but it's about what the primary healthcare are trying to do, and the good work that they are doing is educating. It's educating that, that is a form of abuse where you pull out tablets that you got off the doctor for whatever medical, and you see a person down, and because you're grand, because this is working for you, you're passing them on, thinking that that person could have a different application applicant. So there's a lot of that happening, and it's not a travel thing either. You want to come in there?
Yeah, I'm very afraid to say I'm from mental health. I was just wondering, why isn't there a stakeholder group set up? Why isn't there? You're kind of looking to set up, I assume, psychiatry and some service users or family members who access the services, and that hasn't been set up yet, has it? There isn't a stakeholder group.
Well, I'm hoping that I think Anita's coming up next, so she can. But as far as I know, there isn't. Yeah. I suppose. I think it's more that it's been discussed for a long time.
Yeah.
And it has been slow, right? But I suppose it's to come up with the best way in order to address it and to have, I suppose, a positive outcome.
Because as a person listening to everything today, it's really interesting for me, I suppose, because I'm on the other side.
Yes.
When I say side, I work there, so I can understand both perspectives. I'd say we're very much apart.
I think
if we could meet somewhere in the middle, as in if we understood each other better.
Exactly.
Because a lot of things I hear that I'm not sure I would have the same opinion on, but I think if we connected together, we could maybe make that happen.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But I'm in a grey area, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, again, this topic has come up from a travel point of view because it came up from a survey report that was launched a couple of years ago, the authors in this room done, and travel brought it up.
Yes.
Because it had to be explained to with the dedication of the researchers that went out, got the information. Obviously, you just don't go to a travel, and most people you don't go to dual diagnosis, wouldn't have to know what you're talking about. But if you break it down in theory, I have a bit of that, or my sister's a bit of that, or they they recognise it when you break it down in layman's terms.
Yeah.
So that way. Our strong recommendation at the end of this, because I'm not putting any pressure on anyone, because like I said in the very beginning, we're not going to be going out of this room and saying, oh, we have it solved. Because it's not. But you know the good thing we done it at the last workshop way back in April, and Chairman Shane among the Travers. Fascinating topic as well. It created awareness. And this is what it's doing for the town of Bray. By the end of this, a strong recommendation is, and Balbriggan and Turles and all these places could follow suit, is to set up with their own locality because it's something that we're starting to open up about. So it's bringing stakeholders together. It's bringing the people with the expertise on the community, as I said, yourself, mental health, you have community on the other side. Bring a posse of people forming a steering to come up with some sort of plan, strategy, solution. Yeah. Because we're not going to have, you know, as well as I do, we're not going to have, none of us here, no matter how educated that we are. But you know what we're doing? The beauty of being here today, we're talking about it.
I think the thing about if you're solution focused, that takes you away from the blame.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're a great blame throwing.
Get nowhere.
It gets nowhere. And I think that if we all think like that, the preservation of life should be paramount.
Yes.
For these services. There's people with dual diagnosis, like Josh was dying, there's people with dual diagnosis killing people.
Yeah.
There's people dying as a
Exactly.
result of this. It needs to be paramount, and we need to all work together.
And we have had that concern. We have addressed services on particular clients that we have felt that are a danger to the public and to themselves. And they were directed to.
And there's people great at covering their own backs as well.
In
You
our
can bring up someone and they say something to you and make you feel stupid and you don't ask another question then.
In our area of work, Brian, and you'll be familiar with this, we have this duty of care. But only to a certain level.
Yes.
When a person comes to me and says, I'm going out of this building and I'm going to hang myself, that's all right, 999. Because that's your duty of care of reporting that. Why do I have to let that in my conscience? And I'm going home and I'm thinking, is that person alive or dead tomorrow next day? But it's a common trend among everyone because of what's happening in Ireland at the minute. But travellers are famously, if they're having a bad day, they come up with a conversation, I wish I was dead. Do you know what I mean? And they take that as just as a comment. But now we have this duty of care of, we know through our expertise to get that out of your head, because you're going home to your own family. Do you want that in your head? Whether that person's alive or not. Now, you know, I mean, we're talking about mental health people, and I'm not. You don't have to yourself.
I like a picture of a lot of people.
It's not even just about, it's about having a panel of people from, I know you like, a medal of community.
I know something's not right.
Pillars,
There's no doubt about that.
Exactly.
And I know that working together is where we find the answer, and also listening to people who've used the services, of course.
You say, say for instance, one of our clients is familiar to us, familiar to the mental health, familiar to Gardaí. You know, that if we had a panel, a community panel of service provider stakeholders, that we could, and we do have it in the housing sector, and that we could individually
work together
on that person and come up with a way of helping that person that will help them on every angle. Not just trying to help them on, and again that pinball effect. It's just
I think that's something that could happen. I really do believe that. I don't see any even from our own service, I don't see any resistance to that.
Exactly, and Christy said if anybody wants to get in touch with today's project and come on board a panel.
I have the word here.
I have another option.
Okay, I'm just looking at, has anyone else that, I mean, obviously this is fascinating the way we're doing this. It's great to get people to engage. Any more questions, or are people happy to move on?
I'm sure that it's quite across the board, like the seven community and travellers as well.
Absolutely.
Across the board, like, and we're so lucky to have places to pick and other members to the accounts as well, like, for
Absolutely.
getting involved.
Key services.
Know exactly what's going on, like, you know.
We just need to keep talking.
Absolutely. Okay, so thanks very much again. turn off the lights, because it's better to see the screen on the wall. And this is Nika, and she's going to give on the
Yeah.
diagnosis.
I'm glad I'm doing this because I wouldn't remember everything otherwise. So, just first, thanks a million to Roisin, Brian, Jim, and everybody who's here today, and Peter for asking me to come along actually. I'm Anita White, I'm the National Clinical Programme Manager for Dual Diagnosis Clinical Programme. Worked in HC for 26 years, social inclusion for a good number of those years. So operationally and from a life perspective, I get exactly what everybody's talking about. My purpose today is to talk about the HSE's initiatives from a point of view of developing services and provision of services to support people with a dual diagnosis. I will keep it as sharp as I can because I think the questions and the kind of conversations and the dialogue is the most important part. So just to give you a bit of an overview very quickly of the clinical programme itself. So if you want to stop me and I'm boring, you're going to just do something and I'll stop. Just from a point of view of the National Clinical Programme itself, it was established in 2016. Roisin mentioned earlier on the whole Vision for Change policy. What actually happened was the development of the Vision for Change policy was constructed in a way that actually supported and encouraged the differences between substance use and mental health. So when the clinical programme was in its infancy, we were looking at actually developing it and designing it, instead of policy supporting us to bring it together, policy actually encouraged separation. So the clinical programme at that time had to be kind of stepped down. At the time it was a huge issue and there was a lot of kind of concerns and questions around it. But as time goes on and you fast forward 4 years, sharing the vision came along that actually did a full 180 on those provisions. So in actual fact, the stall of the original programme was a good thing in the end of the day, because now we can look at the provision of service under the mental health division that doesn't exclude people with an addiction or a substance use issue. I generally would rather say substance use issue. So from a point of view of the job that I'm in, I took up the post March of last year, 2021, and the clinical lead took up his post in the summer of last year. So we're working together a little over a year, so it's not the longest clinical programme in history, but that's really where we're at the moment. So just in the end of April 2022, we had sign off of our model of care. So we started working on it in August last year, and sign off from the Chief Clinical Officer in the HC in April of this year. So that's only a little over 6 months. Normally you're looking at a 2-3 year time for these kind of pieces to be signed off. So the dual diagnosis programme, I am going to have to go forward with my glasses so I don't miss anything. So we mentioned, and the two speakers earlier on, Brian and Roisin, like the questions from the floor, they really are identifying a lot of the stuff that we're doing differently with this clinical programme in comparison to the way things were going back in kind of 2016. Originally, alcohol wasn't to be included as part of the dual diagnosis clinical programme. We included that as a part of it now. But we've also gone a little bit further. We're looking at people with behavioural addictions and behavioural issues as well. So dual diagnosis is not just about substances. It's about that coexistence of mental health and then, you know, the way people cope with that, whether it's by taking substances or playing out a certain way or gambling, or we all know the different types of behavioural addictions that are there. The other thing that we're doing very differently, and it's been touched on kind of by most of the people who've spoken today, is we're working across different services and we're working with and through different agencies. As an organisation, the HSE has a lot of relationships with external bodies and external agencies that work quite well, but we struggle sometimes to work across the different divisions, and that's because we're a health system. And health systems are actually diagnostic led. So if you have a diagnosis of one thing, well then that's what's going to be supported first, and that's because it's a health led system. So we have to find creative ways of working across the different divisions within the HC to make sure that somebody with two diagnoses actually doesn't fall through those cracks that everybody's talked about earlier on, where you deal with one before you can deal with the other, and so on and so forth. It's kind of fair to say that from a point of view of the mental health services, even at the moment, around 40% of people accessing the mental health services actually do have some sort of substance use issue as well. So while there is that kind of concept and that theory of exclusion, it's not really the case in as far as we think it is. But what we are doing is we're working with the different services across the HSE and out into the community to develop a fully collaborative way of working with people who present with both issues. So within the HSE, we work with mental health, primary care, social inclusion in particular in primary care, quality improvement division, health and wellbeing, and then HSE digital, because I suppose the big thing with COVID, it really brought to light the way that we can work differently and how we can help people. We can reach more people, we can help more people, or maybe we can't because people don't have access, but it's certainly something that we need to be exploring and really utilising the best that we can. A couple of times earlier on, people mentioned the staff and staff welfare and the people who are supporting people with dual diagnosis. As a part of our clinical programme, we're building it in a way that has different pillars. So in order for us to be able to successfully roll out a specialist team in an area, we have to make sure the staff in those areas are trained and supported to do their jobs. Now that's not just about the mental health team, that's about the HSE teams, and it's also about the community projects, whether they're mental health or whether they're social inclusion. It's actually relevant. If an individual is supporting somebody with a dual diagnosis, they have to be trained, and there has to be a system in place within that area to have the provision of training that these people will actually need. We've designed the model of care in line with all of the principles of the Lunchtime care model of care. We've literally taken all of the literature. We were talking earlier on about having looked at international best practice. We've done I actually did my Masters in Addiction Recovery last year, and a part of that I did, my thesis was on dual diagnosis, so I did a huge literature review on what's out there, what's not out there, what works, what doesn't work. So we used a lot of those pieces as well in the development of the model of care. We have a values-based leadership approach, and that basically means that before we start anything, we look at the collective's values and where we're coming from with it, because if you start with where you meet, you can figure out all your differences, and it's a good way to actually start, especially when you look at trying to shift cultures, and I don't mean cultures of just society groups, but organisational cultures, the way that we provide services, the way that we develop services. You really need to come from a values perspective, because everybody has different opinions and they're all entitled to those. The other piece as well of the values-based leadership approach is the person who's accessing the services is obviously the most important person. So by us adapting that values-based piece, we are identifying as a collective of professionals that actually we all agree that the person we're trying to help comes first, and then we build from that. So it's a very easy way to get rid of barriers and different biases and other things that automatically come into the room. So from the point of view of the dual diagnosis clinical programme, this quadrant is what it's called. There's 4 different quadrants in it, and basically it's a way of distinguishing, if people have substance use and mental health issues, it's basically to decide whether these people are acutely unwell or whether they have issues that need to be supported in a different way. The way that we've designed the model of care is to support people with a dual diagnosis irrespective of whether they're in an acute phase or whether they're attending a community project, like a lot of you work in community projects, and that they aren't very, very unwell, but we will work with those people as well. The original model of care was really only designed to support people with very severe mental health and addiction issues or substance use issues, but we've designed it in a way that will enable us to work with community groups and other mental health teams to support individuals. It was mentioned earlier on the no wrong door approach. That's the approach that we're actually adapting, and that basically means that anybody who has been identified as having a mental health and substance use issue, who appears to have a dual diagnosis, we will endeavour to work with those people individually or through their supporting agencies if they're not quite as unwell as somebody in the specialist team. Okay, so our model of care, I mentioned earlier on that it has been approved through the HSE's Chief Clinical Officer. We have, the model of care is designed in a number of different ways, and actually Roisin was talking earlier on about the personal story. We have 2 different specialist teams. One specialist team, or one type of specialist team, will support adolescents with a dual diagnosis. Now we have identified, we're using the WHO's definition of adolescence, so that's from the age of 10 to 18. So, some people say, is that even, is it young enough? but we feel that's the way that we're going to start moving forward. And then our adult services are from the age of 18 to 65, because after the age of 65, there's another clinical programme who looks after people who are over the age of 65. So the specialist team itself is a multidisciplinary team. So we talked earlier on about how, you know, the psychiatry-led, the addiction counselling and all this sort of stuff, and how it should be working together. The specialist team has all of those different disciplines working together. So it's psychiatry-led, there's a case management approach to the provision of supports to an individual. We have as I say, it's multidisciplinary, so psychiatry-led, there'll be an NCHD, a number of nurses, and then we have senior addiction counsellor, peer support worker, social worker, occupational therapist, and then we have other disciplines of staff that will act as support. So it is a recovery-oriented piece. But when somebody is particularly unwell and they're acutely unwell, there is a need for medical intervention at certain points. So because it's psychiatry-led, that part will be looked after as well. The specialist team will support, so people who are acutely unwell, the specialist team will look after them on a one-to-one basis. So they'll take, so say if you've somebody accessing your services and you refer them into us and they go through the assessment and actually they're deemed appropriate, we'd take over the provision of the care, but working with you because you're the primary source of care. And then we would endeavour to support the person to a point where they can actually go back to you again, and then you can continue with your service. We then support you to support them, as opposed to us supporting the individual. That's the way that we hope the wheel will actually work. And it will be the reverse will be the same as well. So if you have somebody in your service who is presenting as being unwell, but they're not really acutely unwell, we'll do help with kind of assessments, assessments, second opinions, on-site training for the staff, anything that's actually needed to help the service providers for people who aren't acutely unwell. That's how we're going to try and have a system that will actually support anybody with a dual diagnosis. Now it's important just to point out, this is a national clinical programme, so it is really designed for the whole of the community. So it's everybody is included. There are groups that have been identified, like people who are in prison, people accessing maternity services, and members of the travelling community are actually mentioned in the document, the model of care, that these are groups that we will work really hard to try and engage with. So your own community have, we identify that that's a very hard community to reach, and that we will work with any kind of organisations to enable us to do it. So there's loads of different services that we're going to be dependent on, and the reality of that is we're endeavouring to create a recovery-oriented, accessible kind of continuum of care for people with a dual diagnosis. And earlier on there was a lot of conversation around how people who have the issues are the best judges of what should be in a programme, what should, how it should be changed and all that sort of stuff, and we're completely in agreement with that. So before we actually developed the model of care, we did a whole of HSE consultation process with people who have a dual diagnosis. There was over 350 people replied, and the feedback from the good, the bad, the ugly was actually brought into the actual model of care. And there's about 20 pages in that document that's actually the feedback from people with the dual diagnosis. And just to really give their voices a proper place and make sure that they're actually there and they're present. But as we move forward, we've been adapting a PPI, so it's basically a personal public involvement approach. Ultimately what it means is those with the experience are the ones who know what to talk about. So we've made sure as appropriate through the development, the implementation and the evaluation of the programme will be done through PPI. So this is really, really new from a point of view of a health system. Our evaluation of our programme is going to be done by peer researchers. So the actual people who have a dual diagnosis will be trained and supported and promoted to actually evaluate what we're doing to try and help them, because they are actually the best judges. We expect our first initial site to be certainly open. I don't imagine we have a full team in the beginning of 2023. So really what it means is if we're successful in that goal, we will have designed, developed, implemented, and had our first initial site in place within 18 months, which is fairly good for the HC because you're correct, it takes time. So we're doing quite well with that. We have 3 initial sites identified for the specialist team, 2 adult sites, 1 urban, 1 rural, and 1 adolescent site. The recruitment process has commenced for 2 of the sites. We have accommodation identified, or actually the 3 sites, one of them is already in place, the other one is being procured at the moment, and then the 3rd is a HC building that's being renovated at the moment, so we expect that the 3 sites will be ready to go. We have the teams up and running, which is always a big problem. Integration of services is underway, so including the NGO sector. What I mean by that is, when we identified the 3 initial sites, one of the conditions is that the services would come together, exactly what you're talking about. Now, from a point of view of steering groups and working groups and all of that, obviously the HSE don't take responsibility for local community development projects, but we will be involved in anything that, as you were just saying earlier on, if there's anything that we can do to be involved as an organisation, absolutely, we'll be there in a heartbeat. We have completed complete training and needs analysis of all staff working in social inclusion and mental health who support individuals with dual diagnosis. We've identified a suite of training that's required. At the moment, we're going through the HSE structures and our partner organisations to see what's already in place and identifying gaps, and then through HSE Quality Improvement Division, we're going to be building modules that are missing from that suite of training. So that's a piece of work that will be ongoing, but it is something that it's just a part of who we are. So, and then the evaluation framework is established. So I suppose from the point of view of the implementation of what we're doing with the model of care, we have the training and we have the evaluation, and those 3 pieces are going to be kind of the pillars on which we do the implementation, and we will kind of roll out what we're actually trying to achieve. Integrated service, so I have here basically dual diagnosis team, and then around the outside are all the different services that we're working with in the initial sites to make sure that those collaborations are really well embedded by the time we get there. So the HC services, the prison services, maternity services, Section 39, that includes services supporting hard-to-reach populations, liaison A&E, community mental health teams. So you'd probably ask yourself, how did one person and point 2 of a psychiatrist manage this? The reason why we were able to do so much in the last 18 months, it's not because of what we have done, it's because of us working with communities and other partners. We established a good few subgroups to work with us, and each of those subgroups worked on their area of expertise. So interventions, medical interventions, recovery engagement and consultation, training, capacity building, evaluation, women's health, and then PPI methodology throughout. So we have subgroups set up within our structures, and each of those subgroups are led out by extremely professional people in their area of expertise. So if I take the evaluation one, for example, because that's really, really important. We have the evaluation subgroup, and on the evaluation subgroup we have Susie Lyons from the HRB. We have Virginia Minogue, she's the head of PPI for the HSE. We have Joe Barry, he's the professor in kind of public health. We have Dr. David Evans, he's in public health, or he's in social inclusion. We've Dr. Aisling Sheehan, she's the head of the alcohol services for the HSE. So really, really strong, with an independent evaluator, really, really strong group of people who are coming together because they believe in what we're doing. And they believe that they want to give something to this whole system and this project. That's what's making it possible, and that's what's actually making it move very quickly, and me to be confident enough to be able to sit up here and say, actually, we're adapting a PPI approach, it is going to work. It's not because I can do a presentation, it's because the community are coming together. The HSE, our academic partners, the voluntary organisations, the people with lived experience, everybody's coming together to help with this because it's a huge piece of work and it's desperately needed. So in a nutshell, we have the model of care designed and approved by the HSE. It's currently with the College of Psychiatrists, so once it's been approved by the college, we'll be ready to launch. I know people ask, like they go on the website and can't find anything. There is a reason for that. We're busy doing our jobs. So if we put too much on the website at the moment, I know we bombarded with questions. So we just there's a bit of a lull of information out there. we can't really give out information properly until the model care is approved and launched. So once that happens, there will be a whole kind of a communications campaign associated with the national clinical programme. Until then, we're kind of keeping our wish to this, because we'd be taking up all of our time answering questions we actually can't answer. So the initial sites are identified for the specialist teams. Recruitment has commenced, then obviously the training, evaluation, and all the other frameworks are in place. And we've also just started a women's health initiative, which is basically, we're designing across HSE seeking safety model of kind of supporting women who have, who kind of are in situations where they have mental health issues, substance use issues, and domestic violence. So there are 7 areas of the HSE working together on that to design and develop full trauma-informed package to support those women. But that's on the side of what we're doing, but it's going to be a really, really good project. We're really, really proud of that as well. So that's it.
Okay.
That's me.
Ready to turn the lights? Okay, thanks very much. That was very, very interesting. And we didn't do it deliberately, or it wasn't done on purpose in the way that we put 1 to 2 to 3. A lot of what you said in the update is a lot what the 2 previous speakers actually said, which is good that we are, in fact, moving in the right direction, no matter how much time it takes, because this is not about pressure. This is not bringing someone like yourself. We're not robots. And we all have to look in the mirror ourselves and say that to ourselves. We're not. We're trying to improve the impact of dual diagnosis on people that are out there as best we can. Okay, after that presentation, PowerPoint, questions? Okay, we announce like this.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely brilliant, you know, and it really, like when you were sharing there, it really sounds very strong, and it sounds like that a lot of work is being done into it, or put into it. What's the intention for the future?
From a point of view of the rollout?
As the rollout, yeah.
So the HSE, I don't know, I work on the basis that you don't understand the HSE structure. So there are 10 CHOs throughout the HSE. And within each of the CHOs they have mental health teams or mental health catchment areas. There are 12 mental health catchment areas across the whole of the HSE. We will have a specialist team for adults in each of those catchment areas.
Okay.
And we will have 4 adolescent teams across the HSE in 4 of the regions of the HSE. If it's a case that there isn't a hub, we'd call those the hub, there'll be a smaller team in the other regions. So this year, well obviously next year, because things do take a little bit longer, we have 2 adult, 1 adolescent team. So there'll be another 10 adult teams that we rolled in over time, and another 3 hub teams that we rolled in over time. When I say over time, like we have to do everything through the estimates process and look for the money and blah blah blah. So we do have a bit of a plan as to what we would like it to look like.
Okay.
But certainly from a point of view of the rollout, we'll be looking at, you know, early next year, the first 3, and later on next year, be looking at another 3 and getting this rolling as quickly as possible.
Yeah, because I was thinking like that. I mean, it's like a bridge. It's a bridge to change, and I was just thinking that it's very important that it's a bridge and not wallpaper. Like that it's not just papering over cracks, but rather bridging the gaps. And you know, obviously that's what we need. The other thing I wanted to know was, you know, because we're like a lot of the time, like I know that in Wicklow we deal with an old system in terms of mental health. And, you know, is there an expectation of dealing with that's like the old heads from an old system and, you know, getting them on board in terms of...
I think my own experience, I came from kind of a social inclusion background, so I'm in mental health about 18 months, and there certainly appears to be a willingness within mental health structures to work in this way. I think with the change in policy, it gave permission to do things differently, where the vision for change was quite restrictive and kept everybody in their boxes. So I think you need things to change in loads of different ways. You have to start obviously with your policy, your strategy, your framework, and then on the way up as well, things have to change. I think my own experience so far is that CHOs the different areas of HC know this is something that's needed, and they are willing to basically do whatever is needed.
Yeah, because there's people in service for decades.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the protocol would be, you know, you come in the door, how are you? I'm okay. All right, I'll see you in two weeks, or I'll see you in 2 months. Or they may not get a call again. Some of our service users have been on medication for over 10 years, never been assessed, reassessed. So, you know, that there's just this system that's going on and on.
And the specialist team will work differently. So not at the time maybe with that rollover. I'm not sure what the rationale. But certainly this is new.
Yeah.
And if there are people working in services and they know that there's another layer now that can help, there might be more of an openness to actually explore things.
Yeah. So you're kind of thought about that. Yeah.
I mean, we're working with the ECDs, so it's the executive clinical leads in each of the areas from a mental health perspective, and they're buying into it, and they're giving us their commitment, and they're ultimately responsible for the provision of services. So there's a huge willingness.
Because there's a lot of bias, you know, in terms of socially, cultural, you know, there's a lot of, and then you can have it in a systemic way, but you can have it in a personal way as well. So although the system may say this is the way it is, it always comes down to person, you know, whether that person has a bias or, you know, you can't really gauge, you know, so so I'm just wondering, has all that been brilliant?
And obviously, meeting different people, you have to have different kind of ways of communication. But if going back again to the whole values-based piece, we're adopting a values-based approach very simply because everybody is fundamentally here, as Brian said, to try and help the person irrespective of what their biases are.
Yeah.
So if we can bring things back to that basis, if there are obstacles that should help with moving them, and if there are obstacles that can't be moved, then we go around it. We'll figure out ways, but we certainly haven't met any resistance that would make us think that there would be any huge problems of that nature.
Yeah, because we would find that the emotional inquiry is a piece that's really missing from services in terms of mental is all about the head, you know, but in terms of actually inquiring about the person, you know, that takes time and it takes trust, and you know, we would find that getting people to open up is 3/4 of the battle. You know, and then so it sounds amazing.
And we're trying to work with the most marginalised communities in society. That's what we're actually trying to do. So we're under no illusion, and that's why we know that actually it's with communities and with their partners, and you know, exactly what you're talking about, those steering those local pieces come together to realise actually we're different, but we can come together on a common ground. That's all so important, and without that we can't be successful. So that's why when Peter asked, come and speak, absolutely, because you know the clinical programme will be at some point come to your area, and to have these connections and to actually start those conversations well in advance is really helpful. It's really important.
And keep the conversations going. Brilliant.
You okay?
Yeah.
Liz?
Roisin asked a lot, there's just one piece to add.
Okay.
Will you be integrated into the new community networks?
Yes.
So therefore, you were saying about the 12.
Yes.
The 12, we'll say 12 areas. So I'm just trying to break it down very simply. In the fact that at the moment we're involved in the community networks and the new changes of the system. And while it's fantastic to hear this, in terms of a model of practice, which is what we're all in right across the board in the health service. So I just want to visualise here for a moment that this is County Wicklow. And I suppose in an ideal world, my vision of it would be there would be one of those
specialist teams
who would be totally linked in to all of the players that we spoke about.
Exactly. That's the plan.
And that the ground up approach, when we're all talking about the open door, will be provided by those who are trained up from within the community. Including even, not even, but as part of, a traveller could apply for one of those jobs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or anybody could apply for one of those jobs and be trained up. Within the realm of the organisations, travel organisations that are here in Wicklow, and also within the community organisations that are support. Because the framework here is very good. In Wicklow in general, a lot of work has been put in on many levels, both in primary, mental health, hospice service, you name it, and we have a good relationship built over by everybody through their work. So when is the time frame for this to happen?
So from a point of view of this area, we obviously have to go through, so the first sites, CHO3, which is Limerick, Clare and North Tipperary, CHO4, which is Cork, Kerry, and then the first adolescent site is in CHO9, which is the north of the river. Through the estimates process, we've put in for 3 more sites.
Yeah.
We can't mention what they are now because we haven't gotten approval for them yet, so that we don't kind of create an expectation. But we would be planning on working with this area as quickly as we can. Is the only way I can answer.
Very quickly. Okay, the funding for the mental health piece, which we're talking about, it is part of the budget that is funding the overall development of the new service, i.e. the community networks.
Yes, from the HSC.
And it has been departmentally approved. Within the Department of Health, the budget's estimates for
well, there is an approval, obviously, the budget has been approved. We haven't gotten written confirmation of anything that we applied for separately. That will come down, and until we actually get formal notification, we can't assume anything. But we will be working to kind of work we'll be working to move as quickly as we can, is the answer.
Okay, so the National Traveller Health Development Plan has taken years to launch. It's finally coming around. Some people are actually gone past working on this. And it's about to be launched in November, and there's a small budget with that. Though, as you probably know, that plan, which has been fought for years, will be integrated into the local health plans of the HSC. And within those recommendations, like the report that we all worked on here and launched, our recommendations will be very similar to the recommendations of other people, both nationally as well as locally. So I suppose the question is, your process and model will be integrated into the HSC plan, so it's rubber stamped, if you understand.
Yeah, so when I talk about initial sites, the plan is that they start, any kind of sites that are set up through a clinical program are kind of pilots, initial, whatever way you want to phrase it. We generally try not to say the word pilot because that suggests that they're not going to be mainstreamed, but they will become operational. The plan is that all of this will be operational, and will be operational within the normal process of the HC. So the funding we have for 3 sites at the moment is a year-on-year funding. If we get approval for the estimates this year for what we're looking for next year, that will then be year-on-year funding, and it will become operational. But you're correct, any kind of piece of research that you look at the moment, mental health and addiction are in it. So that's not going to it's not going to go away. This will be rolled out, and it has to be. It's that simple. Whether you look at marginalised communities, whether you look at maternity services, whether you look at a review of residential places for older people, there's mental health and addictions everywhere you see. So it's not going anywhere. It will happen.
Okay, and then the other piece then is that when it comes to resourcing, the landing of this, I certainly hope and pray it happens quicker than later. But within that confine, remember that the groups we're talking about, the organisations like yourself and everybody else here, that our resources are very limited. Please don't go from here given the idea that Wicklow Travellers, Bray Travellers have this enormous amount of funding because of people being so dedicated and doing several hours of work.
It's everyone is
the resources are very limited.
I think, to be fair, it's kind of a statutory responsibility to develop these services. What we're trying to do is to harness the relationships. Because by working together and collectively, we can actually get so much more done. And that's all it is. I mean, there's 27 million pieces of literature, as you pointed out rightly, on this one small community. So let's just pull it all together. So that's what we do. And that's what our role is to actually galvanise what's already there as opposed to putting pressure on it. So working together is better.
Can I just ask just one very quick one?
Yes.
Referral. Do you have an idea of what the referral process is?
The referral process, that's all contained in the model care. It's a 189-page document, and once it's released to the air for public view for anybody. So the referral will be through community mental health. It depends on the area. So say, for example, in a very rural area that there may not be very strong HSC teams in place, there may be 1 or 2 community organisations that are identified as there are referrals. But if you've got a system that's in place, so say for example in the larger kind of cities that there's really, really good structures in place, well then through the different HSE structures from the A&E services, we won't be accepting referrals through GPs. The GPs will have to refer, will have to kind of we won't be doing that purely because we would never stay on top of it. So there has to be a little bit of a triage.
But do you think there's going to be scope for, say, the likes of the Bray or Date Project or Wicklow
That's
or
going to be
community
up to the
projects
local area. So
to
when
be
we
able to?
negotiate with the local area,
Okay.
we talk about the referral pathways, and if there's a structure in place that's actually robust enough to do that within the HC as an organisation, fine. If they feel that there should be other organisations involved, we don't really have an issue with that at all. We're very much about what the community needs and what that location in Ireland needs, because what North County Dublin and what, you know, East Cork need, West Cork need are completely different. So we can't.
Yeah, you don't want a situation where somebody has maybe, you know, they've come to date and they've made that connection, you know, the trust is built up and that they don't need to, okay, well, these are really good service for you, but you're actually going to have to go somewhere else.
Well, what
before
we
you can
actually
even
do is,
access that.
say for example, the decision was actually in this area that the referral to the community mental health teams, social inclusion teams, and not one of your direct projects. What we have in the provision of the model and the provision of the service is that you'd actually be called into that, not the referral body. So if you had to go to, say, social inclusion to do a referral into us, well then that's just a process. The actual liaison would be directly with the community organisation that's providing the support.
So it's like a method.
Yes, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And is there a contingency?
Similar to MET, it's not the same as MET, it's similar to it.
Is there a contingency for waiting lists?
Well, you see, you don't expect we will have massive wait lists. We don't expect, well, you see, you laugh now. The specialist team will support people with significant issues. Significant issues. So, if there is a waiting list, well, then there will obviously be that. But what we'll do is we'll put in for the estimates process for bigger teams. We'll grow as required.
Okay.
Our plan is not to have massive waiting lists.
It's important. It's important.
Okay. Anyone else?
Very something to say, well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Been there in 18 months.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well, it's someone who needs business.
Okay, we're almost finished because I know that, you know, absolutely a brilliant morning, and again, thanks to all of our speakers, Brian and Roche as well. You guys have been a wonderful audience, absolutely brilliant. You have engaged. It's a very, very interesting topic of impact our lives as workers locally. Now, what are strong recommendations that we would like to get out of this? And there's no, we're not looking to get people today, so to speak, right? But BIP, as we refer to, Peter, BIP would be in a position to take names and contacts and just to start of a setting up, because if this is common, I'd much rather that us guys that has the experience with the local interaction, face to face, with people, we're going to be in a position. You know? So again, not today, not putting on pressure on people to mingle, to have a few sandwiches, coffee and tea is over there. So look, once again, BIP is a person that can be easily contacted, especially locally, because obviously I wouldn't be expecting somebody trying to jump all the way to Ray. Brian will take away the ideas and look at how brilliant as an area and a similar setup. Once again, thank you so much for coming today. And now you just can get up, go to the restaurant,